Почитувани мојот реферат е насловен Македонците во граѓанската војна во Грција во британската дипломатска кореспонденција. Ноќта на 30 спроти 31 март 1946 година група партизани ја нападнаа жандармериската станица во селото Литохоро, Катеринско, што се смета за почеток на граѓанската војна во Грција. Во август 1949 година беше поразена демократската армија на Грција и тоа се смета за крај на граѓанската војна. Таа траеше 3 години и 5 месеци. Истата остави неизбришливи траги во колективната меморија на македонскиот народ. Во рамките на она што беше граѓанската војна, Грција успеа да го реши прашањето со македонскиот народ во делот на Македонија во рамките на Грција. Таа траума за оние кои преживееја и за нивните потомци ден денеска е настан кој буди непријатни сеќавања. Граѓанската војна во Грција беше резултат, цитат, резултат на судирот на домашните регионални и меѓународни сили, завршен цитат, а исто така, Грција во периодот 44-47 година служеше како земја за тестирање, едноставно лабораторија на меѓународната политика. Несомнено, предисторијата на граѓанската војна започнува во годините на Втората светска војна. На денот на победа...
Because of that, 1945, the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill stated that overnight the chief link was diminished, and that was the defeat of Germany. So the Soviet danger was replaced by the Nazi fiend, and a new page of the foreign policy should be turned. The 45, it was clear to Churchill that when war is led by a coalition approximates its end, the political aspects become even more important. End of quote. The ideological oppositions, communism, capitalism, in the existing conditions only in 1 year will lead to another clash. The interest of the two opposing ideologies will clash in Greece. On one hand, there are the forces of the National Army of Greece, the other of the Democratic Army of Greece, in whose background were Great Britain, who assisted the forces of the king, and on the other hand, the Soviet Union that assisted the forces of DUC, behind which stand the pro-Communist Party of Greece was actually the supporting party. Great Britain was greatly involved into securing its domination on the Balkans and Southeast Europe. On the way towards its goal, the Soviet Union came into sight and kind of hinted its domination in the majority of the Balkan. It was quite obvious that Great Britain couldn't neither military or economically oppose the United States. Because of that, Churchill couldn't reconcile with the American lack of interest in terms of the questions which addressed the acquisition of territories on the European continent. The anti-fascist coalition, whose carriers were the three great forces, United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union, did not believe in capitulation. The reasons for the decay of the coalition should be sought in the years of the war, when the coalition was faced with numerous contradictions, clash of interests, and mutual blaming. So instead of the promised peace, the humanity after war immediately was found at the threshold of new divisions and spheres of influence. The destruction of the German military force carried changes in the relationship between the Soviet Union and the countries of the Western democracies. And the relationship between the Western allies and the Soviet Union immediately after the end of the Second World War started to be sharpened, and Harry Truman could here say that he was ready to undertake the historic role of the Royal Great Britain's interest in blocking the Soviet Union's influence. That was done in 1947. So the Truman Doctrine actually represented the start of the end of the defeat of the forces of DUC. Greece, not by accident, is one of the first countries in which conviction of Washington to use the principles of domination in Europe is demonstrated. The overall philosophy of the foreign policy of the United States was based on the persuasion that the civil war in Greece is a critical battle in the spread Soviet-American confrontation and a key element in the aspirational policy of Moscow. So, in addition to such constellation of forces, the United Macedonian and Greek partisans of the period 47-49 with permanent attacks managed to oppose the numerous governmental police and military forces, even on the territory of the Aegean part of the Macedonia, in order to create a compact free territory. So in the period 47 and 46-47, Macedonians from the Aegean part of Macedonia were massively engaged into the fights, constituting 3/4 of the armed forces under the command of the headquarters of DAC for Central and Western Macedonia. The headquarters of DAC at one point conducted the legislative and the executive authority until the establishment of the temporary or provisional democratic government of Free Greece in December 47. Which meant that for Macedonians, the adopted decisions of the headquarters were quite significant because they stipulated the recognition of the right for existence of the Macedonian minority and the right to educate themselves in their mother tongue and to develop their national culture, etc. So 47 and 48 in the Aegean parts of Macedonia, Macedonian teaching courses were opened in 87 schools encompassing 10,000 students. The spring 45, after the initiative of the management of the Communist Party in the Aegean part of Macedonia, an organization NOF was established, and in their composition the organizations NOMC and AFZ. So in order to achieve, the leader of the KPG, Zachariadas, aware of the facts and the difficult position in which his party was due to the terror, concluded that it's not possible for successfully to lead the armed battle without including the Macedonian factor. So, in order to achieve that goal, on the 2nd of April 46, Zachariadis asked Tito for the Macedonian movement of the Aegean part of Macedonia, which was under the Communist Party, to go under the management of KPG. Tito, in the spirit of its policies and plans in relation to the art movement in Greece and wider, in principle agreed. On one hand, he was supposed to undertake a continuous measure to persuade the Macedonians in the necessity of undertaking that act, and it should be emphasized that putting the Macedonian national liberation movement in the Aegean part of Macedonia in composition of within the Greek and communist movement meant radical changes of its strategic goals. So undertaken conversation in Belgrade on a level of central committees and KPG, a settlement has been agreed as a settlement for unification in order to further the activities of NOF, NOMC and AFG under the management of KPG, and second, that the organizations of the Communist Party will be transformed and their membership will enter the DAC. Such development of events had negative consequences and implications for Macedonia, and the Secretary of the Central Committee, Lazar Kolishevsky, upon conclusion of the settlement, initiated political management from Aegean Macedonia, and that is that NOF will undergo management of KPG and asked to trust it, and that the line and that the Macedonian national question is very clear and very fair, and to fight against all emergence of chauvinism, separatism, and localist tendencies of the Macedonians. So the signed settlement and its enforcement represents a new stage in the history of the Macedonian national liberation movement. That actually has been put in service to implement the policy of the Communist Party of Greece, the KPG. The agreement, not only that it did not provide national rights to the Macedonians, but the leader of the movement, the organization NOF, was characterized as hostile and an enemy, one that is persecuted by the KPG, or the Communist Party of Greece itself. But that huge responsibility was borne by the Yugoslavian communists since without any favorable conditions, they took the Macedonian liberating movement, and after 2 years, without any requirements, gave them over to the Greek communists, which resulted with grave consequences. The Yugoslavian management radically changed its attitude towards the program or aims of the organization, and through the forming of the NOF in 1945, the KPG proclaims that the Macedonian people of the Aegean Macedonia will find its full place within the FNRY, meaning that the creation of the People's Republic of Macedonia within the FNRY became a Yugoslavian question, and that the Macedonia from the Aegean part of Macedonia will be united with Yugoslavia. When united with Yugoslavia, will acquire the national freedom and national rights, meaning that the NOF should direct the Macedonians towards Yugoslavia, and the KPG will not properly resolve the Macedonian question. But by stepping away the Macedonian National Liberation Movement to KPG, Yugoslavian communists renounced themselves from the above stated opinions, and even forced Macedonians from the Aegean part to fight under the governance of the Communist Party of Greece. Thus, Yugoslavia deprived the right of the Macedonians to think and to express unification, something that Yugoslavia propagated and organized them to fight for. The evacuation from the Aegean part, the evacuation of the children from the Aegean part of Macedonia is very important, is very famous, and there are a lot of things mentioned in my paper. I wouldn't dwell on that. So, the resolution of the Inform Bureau. There, we are talking about the ones that supported the resolution of the Inform Bureau and the others that did not support the resolution of the Inform Bureau. And as victims were the Macedonians. The new political course was only a short-term propaganda as an integral part of the Inform Bureau propaganda against Yugoslavia. As the Yugoslavian-Soviet conflict became a reality, then London and Washington tried to take advantage of the situation in the times of the Inform Bureau. At the beginning of 1949, the British concluded the government of His Majesty was of great importance in its defensive fight against the Soviet communism in Yugoslavia, not to be again absorbed in the Soviet bloc. End of quote. Since that could have been used or abused for putting a crack into the East European solidarity. At the same time, the Americans concluded that it's good for the Titoism to continue to exist as an erosive and disintegration force in the Soviet sphere, and that is necessary for Tito to be maintained as a strong enough figure. On the other hand, the American State Secretary Dean Acheson advised the embassy in Belgrade for continuously to bear in mind that it's of vital interest to the USA for the Yugoslavians to stop the support of the Greek guerrilla, emphasizing that Tito will have to clearly understand that the USA are not prepared to continue and assist to increase the level of Yugoslav economy if his regime supports the uprising against freely selected government, a member of the United Nations that is militarily supported by the USA. When Tito will face the selection of its own vital interest, he will force him to terminate assistance. The Americans were very good analysts
Tito faktički во ниту еден момент не бил спремен да ја жртвува.
Was he prepared to sacrifice the stability of his regime and territorial integrity of the newly formed federation in order to unite Macedonia, which proved right away the exclusion of Yugoslavia from the Info Bureau in June 1948, namely faced dangers of economic and military aspect. Josip Broz Tito denied from the idea of creation of unified Macedonia and left the fight of the Greek communists and Macedonians. In that new situation, the basic goal of UK and USA was through economic help to blackmail Tito to leave, to give away from helping the forces of DAC, DAG, and in that way in a way which will not be noticed, so that it wouldn't affect his internal reputation. So, 1949, in Belgrade, Fritzo McLean was sent, a person who became friendly during the war with Tito. He was part of his head HQ as member of British missions in Yugoslavia. In the talks among them, political agreement was achieved, and the political refugees on the territory of Yugoslavia would be forbidden to go back to Greece and continue the fight, and fighters will not be given any help. After this mutual agreement, Yugoslavia used every opportunity to convince Western allies about the change of its policy towards Greece, that is, that Yugoslavia does not help the uprisers in trying to prove its consistency given to McLean. The official publishing of the Yugoslav decision for closing Yugoslav border towards Greece followed after July the 10th, 1949, when with this decision British did not have any doubts anymore that the Macedonian question is put in the fridge. After the Gramos fight, 50,000 DAC soldiers could not go back to Yugoslavia because the border was closed. Fortunately, Albania opened their borders, and they could go through there. Otherwise, they would have gone through massacre. The epilogue is very clear. Greece remained to be the pillar of Western democracy, and the Iron Curtain was put down. Definitely, the greatest consequences and damages of the civil war were suffered by Macedonia. Except for civil loss, 21,000 victims died. Material damage, more than 50,000 Macedonians were forced away in exile, displaced from their homeland as a result of the Greek rule, which took a series of administrative, political, and territorial measures for ethnic cleansing of the eastern part of Macedonia. Having analyzed the internal and international circumstances and the course of events after the Second World War of the Yugoslav communists towards Macedonia's separatist part was not only wrong but damageful also. KPJ did not have the right to take away the rights of Macedonians from the Asian part of Macedonia, to unify their fight with the fight of the Macedonians from the Vardan region in the course of Second World War, even more after development and the outcome of the events in Greece after the Second World War. That was the end of the hope of Macedonians of the Asian part of Macedonia will ever be able to realize their national rights in the frameworks of the Greek state. This Golgotha of Macedonians of the Asian part of Macedonia still persists today. Thank you.